A very, very warm welcome to all of the guests, students and colleagues from across the university that are joining us this evening. My name is Dorothy Meal. I'm the Head of College of Humanities and Social Science. It's an enormous pleasure to introduce Professor Nanette Mutrie to present her inaugural lecture this evening. I think given the title that's up here, encouraging people to sit less and walk more, you should really all stand for the lecture. But perhaps we'll let you off that. Certainly coming up these last couple of flights of stairs, I think is probably enough exercise for most of us for a little while. But very, very warm welcome to everyone here this evening. A little bit of background. I'm sure most of you know heaps about Nanette, but for those of you who may not know the full picture, I thought I should say a little bit about her background and academic career to date. Interestingly, Nanette's first degree was in physical education from Dunfermline College of PE. Now, as some of you will know, that then was, at the time, was located in Cramond, but then subsequently merged with Moray House, which subsequently merged with the University of Edinburgh. So I think in many ways this chair has brought you back home.
Absolutely.
After her first degree, she went along to the University of Glasgow to do a Master's in Education, and then won a Fulbright scholarship to study for a PhD in exercise science at Penn State University in the USA. This won't be Nanette's first professorial inaugural lecture. She's an old hand, because she was appointed to the University of Edinburgh's Chair of Physical Activity for Health in July 2012, after already having been Professor of Exercise and Sports Psychology at the University of Strathclyde for 8 years, and prior to that was Professor of Physical Activity and Public Health Sciences at the University of Glasgow. She also holds visiting professorships at the University of Ulster and with the MRC Social and Public Health Sciences Unit at the University of Glasgow. And she served on several National Institute for Health and Clinical Care guideline development groups. Nanette's research has focused on developing and testing interventions that enable people to become more physically active. She has a particular interest in the mental health benefits of an active lifestyle. The success of her work can be seen in so many different ways. Her considerable international acclaim, giving keynote lectures at the International Physical Activity for Public Health Congress and the International Society for Sports Psychology Conference, also can be seen in her wide range of very well-read publications and her success in securing more than £7 million worth of research funding over the last 5 years with her collaborators. I'm sure she'd be the first to say. And it's also clear from her fantastic record as a PhD supervision and all the PhD students that she's supervised, and good to see some of them here tonight. Nanette's been director of the Scottish Physical Activity for Health Research Collaboration from 2005 to 2012, and I know she particularly wants to thank colleagues from this collaboration for their contribution to the Sit Less, Walk More research agenda and the campaign that she'll be talking about tonight. I'm delighted that Nanette will be taking some questions after her lecture, so you'll have an opportunity to start a discussion, and then you're all welcome to join Nanette at a reception downstairs, just the next door along in the quad, in the Lorimer room. There's going to be a reception afterwards, and you're all very, very welcome. The lecture, we've got a fantastic audience tonight, but the lecture is also being videoed and will be broadcast on the website in perpetuity.
In purple.
In perpetuity. So I'm sure there'll be an even bigger audience in the longer term. But I'd like now to welcome Professor Nanette Mutrie to present her lecture, Encouraging People to Sit Less and Walk More, the Story So Far and Future Plans.
Thank you. Come on in. Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening. A warm welcome. Thank you to Dorothy for that lovely introduction. Thank you to the University of Edinburgh for the opportunity to do this. Not all universities give professors that opportunity, so I haven't done 3 of them, I've only done 2 of them. And to Moray House School and to my institute for a good welcome and a strong support for what I wanted to do. So it's been a fantastic first 18 months here at the university for me. And thank you for the audience for coming. And you know, as I've been saying around my research group, I think this is a tough gig. This isn't an international keynote, but it's harder than that. It's harder than that. We've got the academics, some of whom know my work very well and have supported me, some of whom might want to critique it. But then I've got my friends and my family, some of whom have said, if this is your first lecture, what the heck have you been doing for the last 18 months? Others have said, now is heckling allowed in this particular forum? Dorothy says, yes, okay. Watch out for that. And then my sister who said, I can't come. I've had enough lectures from you in my life. She lives in Preston is really the reason. So, to the topic, this is the theme of our research centre, the Physical Activity for Health Research Centre, PARC. Many of my PARC colleagues are here. Thank you for that and for going with me in this direction so easily as we started up. The sitting less and walk more goes back longer time than Edinburgh, but this research group adopted that straight away. So that was my thank yous, and here is the plan. I'll tell you a little bit about why PARC has chosen this theme. I'll talk about the walking part of the theme, the sitting part, and a bit of the way forward. And when you see a picture of my dog, you'll know we're nearly at the end, because that is the way forward. And then Dorothy says we can have some questions. So try not to keep you sitting down too long either. Watch out for that. So yes, returning to Dunfermline College home, which is now in the Edinburgh University, reminded me of one of the mottos that I've had for a long time. Efforts are successes. It is the motto of Dunfermline College. It was on my college badge. And when I got into the institute, I discovered there was a big plaque there that had all this written on it. So this is the original Dunfermline College of Hygiene and Physical Education, started in 1905. I wasn't there then, just in case you wanted to add that. But I was there when it was Dunfermline College of PE, and they still had this motto, efforts are successes. For the motivational psychologists in this room, there are many, you'll know that's completely about task motivation. And whoever decided that was the motto knew all about it. Actually, it was Andrew Carnegie. And he said this, funded the money for the college, and of course it's the try again spider that's part of it. So it's very nice for me to come back and see that, and we often say in our group, efforts are successes. The current world of academia means you don't win all the grants, you don't get all the publications that you want, you don't make all the goals that you have, but every effort that you have is a success for us. And also that brought me back to my roots of why I like this topic. In Dunfermline College, we were learning, and actually, where is Anbar? One of my college classmates. We might have been learning. You, Anne, were perhaps doing that gymnastics. I was never that good at gymnastics. This was a blue-coloured book. I couldn't find it again in Murray House Library, but I remember the book very well, Introduction to Teaching Gymnastics. My classmates were learning how to do these lovely things. I wasn't so good at that. I was busy reading the introduction to the introduction. And in it, it said, we need to teach children gymnastics because there's a threat of hypokinetic diseases. And I was intrigued by that. Hypokinetic diseases, too little movement. We could get a disease from too little movement. And the book was saying this is a good reason to teach gymnastics. This was in the 60s, and all they said was there'll be a threat because, you know, our current world isn't providing enough movement. Roll on 50 or so years, and we have overwhelming evidence that the threat is a reality. So as recently as last July, the LANCET, you know, perhaps the most prestigious medical journal in the world, had a series about physical activity for health. It was coinciding the Olympic Games being hosted in London. And the most up-to-date evidence is that not only is there a threat of hypokinetic disease, it is a serious reality. All of these particularly risky things will be reduced in risk if people are regularly active. So you can see that whole list there. things that many people in this room might have been faced with or have family and friends that are facing. In addition, we get the benefits of increased cardiorespiratory and muscular fitness from being active, something to do with body composition, better weight management, serious problem of obesity still in Scotland, improved bone health, the osteoporosis issue, functional health, keeping independence as we grow older, and a newer thing, cognitive function, linking what we do with our body to what is important about the function of our brains. So all of that isn't just a threat, it's now a reality. And so that hypokinetic disease word that started me thinking in this area has kept me interested throughout my career. So the Lancet series not only said, this inactivity, it's pretty risky, it can help for a lot of different conditions. It also declared that inactivity around the world, of course, has reached pandemic proportions. So it's not just a situation that the Western world faces. Even in countries that are rural and underdeveloped, there is now risks of inactivity because people are adopting a more urban and industrialized lifestyle. And interventions are needed. And so this is where PART comes in. We decided that we would like to have a go at having interventions that helped people become more active. And just before we get to that, a little test for you. And you're allowed to discuss with your neighbour on this. You don't have to do it all on your own. So here are some statistics, again, from the Lancet paper about the risks of smoking. Everyone will know that there's a risk in smoking. And we also know the governments around the world and Scotland have spent a lot of money and created laws that have helped people reduce the amount of smoking they do because it's very, very risky. So around the world, deaths caused in millions here, and this is the population attributable fraction. If smoking were reduced altogether, around about 10% less people would die. The test for you is to say, if I put up the blue bars, which are coming next for inactivity, is that riskier than smoking? Anyone think that? Just think it to yourself, chat to your neighbour. Is it less risky than smoking? A lot. Or is it quite like smoking? You're allowed 30 seconds discussion on that. And the answer is, it's almost the same. Anybody get that correct? Excellent. Excellent. You could even maybe say it's riskier than smoking, but it's almost the same, which, to most people is a big surprise. Could lack of activity be as risky as smoking? Yes, it can. So this means we have to take it a lot more seriously, perhaps, than we have been doing. In Scotland, inactivity is the norm for the majority of the population. These data come from the Scottish Health Survey. Actually, in this room is the woman that analysed it. Where are you now, Catherine? There she is. And we've been gathering this data for some time. Men in the blue bars, women in the red bars there. The recommendation that we've been monitoring is if people can manage 5 days of the week of 30 minutes accumulated activity. So adding up everything you do in the day, does it amount to 30 minutes? And can you do that 5 days of the week? You might be thinking to yourself, am I doing that at the moment? But this is what we've been monitoring through the Scottish Health Survey. And you can see that 40% of men were managing that in 1998 and just under 30% of women. And in these early years, we were enthusiastic. Look at this, this is going up. Right at that same moment in time, the government produced the Let's Make Scotland More Active physical activity strategy. This all looked very promising. The early years were going well. We had a target of 50% of the population, both men and women, reaching these recommendations by the year 2022. And we're halfway there. So then we were monitoring it more often, and we've hit a plateau. Nothing much is happening here. So this makes the majority of the Scottish population inactive and therefore at risk of all the things that we've looked at in the earlier slides. So we've got a lot of people to try and help to become more active. Meanwhile, in the world, lots of activity has been taking place about how best to promote physical activity. What should governments do? And this is a lovely summary from the global advocacy in physical activity group. And I'm very pleased to say that I think most of these things are happening in Scotland. Whole of school programs. And this is exactly what the Curriculum for Excellence is doing, and my colleague Suzanne here is in charge of that in Scotland. They talk about sport, they talk about physical education, they talk about physical activity, the whole school. Transport policies, well, we've got a cycling strategy and we've got a walking strategy underway. I'm sure we can do more there. Urban design, we have an expert in the back, Catherine Ward-Thompson. We're doing things about that in Scotland to promote how we can be active. We're doing some things in primary health. We're piloting the way to get that into every GP consultation. We're doing some public education. We're doing community-wide programs. Sport Scotland does have a sport for all ethos. So in Scotland, we're doing a lot of the right things, but if we're going to move that plateau up, we need to do more of this at scale in every corner of Scotland and with more resources probably than we've spent. I imagine if we spent the same amount of money that we've spent in helping people stop smoking, we could probably increase the physical activity levels in Scotland. That was a wee message for Donna. Where's she now? So, Park has adopted the idea that we should, as our main theme, try to test and develop interventions that will help people sit less and walk more. And I'll come to these two bits soon. I'm the director and I'm tweeting, and Chloe is our coordinator and she is tweeting. We're trying to be mod cons. In our research, since we were launched in January 2013, so less than a year old, we've had collectively 16 papers published. We've made 19 research bids. Efforts are successes. We've had collectively and in collaboration about £5 million in funding. We've got 14 core members, 30 associates, 80 people who declare themselves to be friends of Park. If you're interested in that, you are allowed to be. We have 2 Chancellor's Fellows, a wonderful opportunity that Edinburgh University provides for people that have their PhD to go into a more research-oriented career, and we've had 1 visiting scholar. We're doing things in teaching as well. We've got a new MSc starting in September 2014 on our topic. Anybody interested in that? Yes, we have people you can speak to later on. We've done a lot of undergraduate and master's dissertation projects. We've currently got 2 PhD scholarships, and we've had 1 successful viva in that time. Going well there. In knowledge exchange, we're at conferences presenting, sometimes keynotes. We have 294 followers of Park. I have 553, I was able to work out. We have had an internship with Pass for All. We've had a fellowship, I'll explain about that. We've videoed some seminars from visiting guests. We've got little 1-minute research in a nutshell videos you can find on the web. And we've won a bid to host a major conference in 2015. So we've not been sloppy in the last less than 12 months. We've been very productive. So why are we chosen walking? We think walking's the easiest thing for people who have been inactive to get started with. But also, it is perhaps the easiest to sustain. You may all have had a gym membership at some point in your life, and then something happens and you can't keep doing that. You can always go back to walking. You may have been playing squash for a long time in your career, and you're not doing that anymore, but you can still be walking. And it confers all the major benefits of activity. And maybe some people don't realize that. In our early discussions, people go, is walking enough? Indeed, I've heard our Chief Medical Officer, Harry Burns, 10 years ago said, walking won't do it. But now he says, walking is a good answer for inactivity. So I've chosen this infograph from Everybody Walks that just kind of summarizes all the benefits it can provide. If we start here, boosts endorphins. This is all about how we feel and what our mood might be like. Reducing glaucoma, halving out the risk of Alzheimer's disease, limits sicknesses from colds, and so on. It's working not only your legs, but your arms and shoulders, improving heart health, engaging abdominal muscles, all that core work that we're supposed to do. Blood pressure improved, limiting colon cancer, building bone mass, strengthening legs, improving balance, burning more fat than jogging. Andrew, do you believe that, actually? No, that's not fair, he's just come in. Ultra-marathon runner. Well, only if the walking covers the same distance as the running, because that's going to take you a longer time to do it. And there is a theory that that lower level of intensity actually prefers the fat burning for fuel. So that can be true as well. So a nice summary of the health benefits, and then courtesy of my colleagues at Paths for All, they've got this little diagram about why walking for health, the pathway for the least active. It's not age dependent, it can become habit, it can be transformative in people's lives. It's got little expense. It's the least affected by SIMD, the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. We see that the most affluent are the most likely to be involved in sport and exercise, and a gradient goes down to the least affluent. But for walking, it's much flatter. All different categories of social deprivation are walking at almost the same level. And it can be social. So lots of good reasons to promote walking. But in Scotland, the level of walking per person is going down. These are the transport statistics, so they can monitor this over time. So in a decade, we see that people are walking 73 miles less per person per year than they were in the late 90s up until now. And we can predict or speculate on what these reasons are, but there's another reason to encourage more walking. Now, if walking is so good, why did it take us so long to get round to it? I confess we did make an early mistake. This was when I was at the University of Glasgow. Craig, you might have been a student of mine at that point, and you'll remember John Durnan. Susan, too, you'll remember John Durnan. And anyone that's ever done exercise physiology knows this particular reference, where you use these skin fold calipers to measure the thickness of different parts of someone's body, and then Durnan, the professor, had this way of converting that into percentage body fat. Some of you might have had that process done to you. So myself and my boss at the time, Peter Radford, and a colleague at the time, Mike Kelly, who's now in charge of public health at NICE, we went to John and said, well, what's the big idea? What should we start researching on? We were beginning being academics. We had just started the physiology and sports science degree at Glasgow. And he said, I think you should focus on walking. And we went, all right, okay. And then we all came out of the meeting and we went, we're not going to do walking, are we? No, we're not doing walking. So we were full of exercise classes and fitness-oriented things, and we sort of set off on that path. But he was right. We should have started then on walking, and it took us a wee while to catch up with his thinking, but eventually we started looking at how to encourage people to walk. So this is one of our early studies from Glasgow University, where we had the chance to try and encourage people to travel more actively and therefore do some more walking. Actually, some people in this room might have been in that study when I think about it. And what the intervention group got was a package, this is the front cover of it, that had a whole lot of ways of prompting and encouraging them to think of how to walk in to work out. It had a wall chart. We had all the sort of distances to the local stations worked out. We told them where the cycle shops were. We gave them maps. Now, of course, that can happen on people's phones more easily. We gave them reflective accessories. We gave them all sorts of ideas on how to choose routes, to be safe, where all the showering and parking facilities were for bicycles. And what we found was that we managed to do something for walking. These were the people who were thinking about being more active and going to work at baseline. The control group didn't get that material. The experimental group got that package, and we measured them 6 months later. So we found that that increased their walking to work by almost 2 hours. You can see the control group did actually increase as well. So it's not rocket science. If you want to walk to work, you could do more. But fortunately, our resource helped them even a bit more than that. But we didn't do anything for cycling. We didn't have enough people that wanted to try that. The overwhelming perception was that that was too difficult, too dangerous. And so again, we were prompted to think, well, walking maybe has more opportunity to help people become more active. Then we started thinking about adding pedometers. And in the meantime, and I happen to have one because we're doing the step count challenge in our group at the moment. In the meantime, reviews have shown that the pedometer by itself, used correctly, is the single most effective method of promoting physical activity, measured against a web-based version, a one-to-one consultation, a leaflet, a variety of other things that people might choose. So this is very encouraging because we had been using them for some while when this came out. We've also looked at what are the little skills and techniques that people need when they're trying to change their own behaviour. These are, in the jargon, called behaviour change techniques. What do they do? What are the things that are successful for people? And we've been reviewing this in relation to walking and cycling. And we found 21 studies that we could work with. And they told us that one of the most important things that you could do to help people was to prompt self-monitoring of behaviour. Self-monitoring is what we do if we weigh ourselves regularly, and a pedometer allows us to self-monitor our steps. It also told us the other most important thing was to help people with intention formation. This is, what is the plan I'm going to make for tomorrow and next week about my walking? And the pedometer, again, works out to be a perfect tool for these two issues. You can monitor what you've been up to in the day, and you can set a goal for tomorrow or in the longer term to increase that. And we've published this review this year. So pedometers became big time in all of the work that we were doing. And thanks to Lindsay for some of this slide. This is what they do. They make use of several different behaviour change techniques. There's the goal setting about what you're doing on a daily basis or over a longer time. There's the self-monitoring to check what you've managed. There's self-efficacy, which is about confidence building. So you begin to realize, I can do that amount of walking. There could be problem solving involved. You know, if it's raining, where do you go? B&Q is a good option, I think, for that. I'm wandering around there a lot. There's motivation. You get instant feedback on whether you've managed your goal. And perhaps there's some social support there because people see you wearing it, you talk about it, and maybe also get engaged in walking. So one of our early studies was walking for well-being in the West, and this was funded by the Scottish Physical Activity Research Collaboration, and we set these goals out for people as a suggested start point. So if you're thinking now of how am I going to do some increased walking, here's not a bad way to start. Add 1,500 steps to what you're currently doing, maybe on 3 days a week. So if you wear a pedometer, you'll realize that you'll clock up 5,000 steps maybe in a day without really making any effort. So what we were saying to people is, add on to that about 1,500 steps. Now that equates to about 15 minutes of walking. So if a pedometer doesn't appeal to you, you might just have a watch that can work reasonably well also. So do that in 3 days a week, just start gradually. Add that up to 5 days of the week in the next little period of time. Again, add on to it a little bit more. So we're now asking 3,000 steps, more than you were doing at baseline, on about 3 days of the week. That is 30 minutes of walking. And then by week 7, you're trying to do that on 5 days of the week. Then over our 12-week program, your plan is to try and hold that together, keep that going. And we found that that helps people make gradual change, fit it into their life, and manage to keep it going over time. So here's some of the ways that we frame up our research. We do some development, and we started off in that area by writing a systematic review about walking. Then we do some piloting and feasibility. We have some small studies. These early studies showed us that we needed that whole 12 weeks, that 4 weeks where we started wasn't as good, and we needed to spread it out for people. Then we evaluated it over the short and long term. We did some cost effectiveness that I'll just show you. Then we tried to implement it, and we've got other studies that I'll show you soon about where we're putting this walking program now. And we're going round the circle again. We've done a systematic review about recruiting people, learning from that, and this is the systematic review about the behaviour change techniques. So this is the framework. We keep trying to move ourselves round to improve the knowledge base. So here's the results of our Walking for Wellbeing in the West study, where we had 2 groups. One in blue here got the intervention, which involved a discussion about how a person might improve their walking, that set of walking goals as a suggested outline, and of course, the pedometer. And the red group, they had to just wait for a while until they got their chance to do something different that I'll show you in a minute. So the control group after 12 weeks made a very small increase, but the intervention group improved by about 3,000 steps a day, which is the 30 minutes that we're after. And that was a significant difference for that group. And in the meantime, 65% of that group actually managed the current recommendation of 150 minutes per week, which equates to the 15,000 steps per week. Over time, we had the lovely purple group continuing. They were the original intervention group, and the slightly darker group here, they just got the pedometer and the walking program. And almost up to a year, you can see a slight advantage for the people that were allowed to discuss and had a more intensive intervention. But by this point, nearly a year later, they're still significantly above the baseline, but there isn't really much difference here. So just the walking program and the pedometer used correctly helped people all the way up to a year to increase their physical activity. It was cost effective. Our paper has the title that we needed, Pedometers Cost Buttons, and it's under £100 a person to achieve those recommended levels of physical activity, which makes it a very cost-effective health behaviour change intervention. Okay, now the sit less part. Why are we doing that? Could sitting possibly be bad for you? This is the brand new topic in our area of research. Sitting down for long periods of time is bad, primarily for metabolic health. This is particularly related to the risk of type 2 diabetes, metabolic health, a particular, probably an epidemic of that in Scotland as well. But it's also bad for muscle and joint health. You'll know yourself if you sit down for too long, you ache, you have to stretch. This is not good. And here's the tricky bit. It's still bad if you are doing your 150 minutes of activity in the week. And this is the new part that's been hardest for people to understand. So just show you a graph about this, courtesy of my colleagues in Australia, Neville Owen. So here we have odds of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is having high blood pressure, being overweight or obese, and having raised levels of blood sugar, but not yet having type 2 diabetes. But this is something that the medical profession is monitoring. On this line here, we've got the physical activity time. So if you're doing more than 2.5 hours a week, that's the recommendation. You're in this box here. If you're doing less than 14 hours of television viewing time a week, you're also in this box. They're okay. They're the reference group. But every other group on this graph is at increased risk of getting this metabolic syndrome in comparison to this group at the front. And these are just the odds ratios here. So if we go up this way, if you're not doing your 2.5 hours a week, you're almost at twice the risk of metabolic syndrome compared to someone who is doing it. The graph is for women, the graphs for men are very similar. But here's the scary bit. If you are doing your 2.5 hours a week and you are watching the television more than 14 hours a week, that's 2 hours a night, that's pretty easy to do, you're still at almost twice the risk of this metabolic syndrome. And of course, if you're doing neither of these things, you're not doing that, you're not doing your 2.5 hours, and you're doing more than 14 hours, this is the biggest risk, almost 4 times the risk. So this kind of epidemiological data has led us to believe we better start working on how to help people sit less as well as walk more. So, of course, you get to stand up now. So if you want to, I'm not going to twist your arm, I'd like you to stand up and discuss with your neighbour, do I have long periods of sitting in a day? And what could I do to reduce that? You have a minute for that. So here's exactly the challenge for education. With you all on your feet and talking like that, the person at the front gets a bit scared about how they'll ever get everything back under control. So sitting's a lot better for that point of view, but every so often we need breaks. So I hope you've got a couple of ideas from that discussion about what you might do in your own lives. It's definitely a challenge for most of us not to be sitting down for long periods of time. And hopefully in this next few slides you'll get some further ideas from what we've been up to. So one of the studies we've done recently, Claire Fitzsimons, one of our Chancellor's Fellows, has been leading this, is to kind of use what we've learned from the walking promotion to see if we can apply the same behaviour change techniques to helping people sit less. So this was with a group of older Scottish adults, and we spoke to them about what they might like to do in terms of not sitting down so much. When could it happen? What were the things that would stop them trying to change their behaviour? We also showed them feedback from a device called an Active Pal, which very accurately monitors sitting versus standing versus walking. And we gave them a couple of weeks to try and put these new behaviours into place. And we found that we managed to help them reduce sitting by about 25 minutes a day. But there's the scary thing, the total sitting time is around about 17 or 18 hours a day. That does involve also lying down and sleeping time, but nevertheless, that's a lot of the percentage of the day. So that doesn't seem very much, but that we don't know if that is really clinically significant yet. We're at the very early days of working out if that really will confer health benefits. And this is how they managed to do it. They managed to reduce their television viewing time over the course of the week. So that was the behaviour they targeted to try and change. Maybe it's getting up and down at the adverts, et cetera, that they managed to do. So that's some of the work we're starting. And then we've begun to bring the sitting less aspect into all of our studies. So we're trying to encourage people both to sit less and walk more now in the studies that we're currently doing. And this is one of my favourite all-time studies. It's about football fans. We've been successfully looking at the football fans of all the Scottish Premier League clubs. This has been in conjunction with the SPL Trust and the football pools have helped fund that, along with the NIHR. It's led by my colleagues Sally Wyke and Kate Hunt from the University of Glasgow. The question was one about losing weight, but becoming more active was certainly the secondary component. This has been a hugely important and very fun project to be involved with. This is our full trial that we've just finished, and this is just to give you an idea of the numbers. So we had to randomize people. Some people got the Football Fans in Training program at the beginning, and they are the intervention group. Others got it 1 year later, and they are the comparison group. And this was done at the level of the individual through all the Scottish Premier League clubs, where the coaches were delivering our educational programs to the fans. But this is just to give you an idea of the numbers. We needed 360, we got 374. At 12 months, we had 86% of the people still involved. Any of you that have done a 1 year study of anything knows that that's excellent to get people retained in your study. And this is part of the huge motivation that the fans had to be involved in this program. You know, we need study motivation no further, our psychology friends that are here, because if they're a football fan, you've got it right away. They're hugely motivated. But even in the comparison group, who didn't get anything for a whole year, 94% of them came back for their 12-month measures. This is the sort of things that we're doing in a 12-week program where coaches delivered bits of classroom activity and bits of exercise activity in the football grounds. The fans loved that. They came in their jerseys. They sometimes saw a player that they knew. They loved seeing the main coach, who would sometimes come in and just give them a little hello. And that motivation has been unmatched in anything that I've ever been involved with. They learned about controlling their food intake. They learned about alcohol awareness. We tried to teach them the behaviour change strategies that I've been talking about. Their goal was weight loss and increased physical activity. A key part of this was the banter that emerged from the discussions and witnessing some of this. Coaches were absolutely brilliant at doing this with the men involved. And there's a video site that I'll point you to if you want to hear some of that banter. It's just a magnificent motivational setting. Now, the physical activity part was my part of this study, and of course, the pedometer featured highly in that. People said, reviewers said, critics said, you'll never get men to walk. We did. So we didn't listen to that. We still tried to go ahead with the walking. We also gave other homework parts where they were encouraged to go and look for local facilities, maybe join the Works gym, maybe do some active travel, meet with other fans. There was some addition to just the walking program. And in the stadia each week, the fans loved it if they were allowed to run on the hallowed turf and actually be on the pitch. That was their favourite thing. But sometimes it was inside. We were teaching them the components of health-related fitness. This is boxercise going on. So I'm very pleased to say the main results of that study are in press in the LANCET. 1.5 hours too late to be submitted to the ref, Dorothy. Sorry about that. And because of that, I'm not really giving you a big graph of the results, but roughly speaking, they did lose 5% of their body weight, which is the clinically important part. They did increase their physical activity by about 3 hours a week. They did decrease their sitting time, but only over the first part. We didn't manage to maintain that for a year, so we need to learn more about how to sustain the sitting down time. And that confirmed pilot study results. If you're interested, you can see basically the same thing in that particular publication. And this little video clip is what I would point you to if you want to get a flavour of these sessions of how we worked with the football fans. And they liked the pedometer, and they liked walking. My colleague Kate Hunt did these interviews to get the qualitative reasons behind their increases. You've got to walk before you run was definitely their viewpoint. It became an important part of their daily routine. They found them to be motivating. Self-monitoring and goal setting were all part of what they found the pedometer useful for. And here are some of the things they said. So people liked the pedometer. And it's an amazing wee device. So, the pedometer and the walking were proven to be important parts of the programme, despite some serious criticism we had at the start in even attempting that. We've also tried to use this with older adults who are over 65, and this was our West End Walker study. And this is important because maintaining function is the critical thing at this age group. So here are our years of life, age going along the bottom, and we attain optimal function early in adult life. If things go well for us, it declines a little bit into older age. If things are not going so well for us, it declines more steeply. We cross this disability threshold where we're not able so much to live independently. And we think that physical activity can play its part here in trying to avoid people taking the steep decline and keep them nearer the top functional line. There's a lot of benefit that older adults can get from becoming active. And the thing is, it's never too late. You're never too unfit to get fit. You're never too weak to get strong. So you can start any time and get that benefit. So in this intervention with the West End Walkers, again, we had an intervention where they had a consultation. This time we trained a practice nurse to deliver it, much more real, what happens perhaps in general practice. They got, of course, the pedometer and walking program. The control group continued as normal until they got their turn to get the intervention. These are some of the materials that we used down the side here. And here's what we found. These are the steps per day coming from the ActivePal device, a very accurate way of measuring steps. And we can see the intervention group who got the chance to get started right away. They increased their steps by around 2,000 steps a day. Not quite as much then as we managed to do with the adults, but this will confer health benefits to older adults. They maintained that to the 24-week point. And the control group, they didn't get anything till this point, and then when they got the intervention, we get that same increase. So it's lovely to see it happening twice. That confirms the idea that our intervention is helping people change. But the ActivePal also objectively measures sitting down time. And sitting down time, as we've seen, averages around about 16, 17 hours a day. And we encouraged in our intervention this time people to find ways of sitting less. And the intervention group decreased by 48 minutes a day. This has probably got a health benefit of its own. Again, we're at early days of this. We don't know if that's true. And when the control group got their chance, they also decreased their sitting down time. So this is very encouraging that we can do the same walking programs and we can change sitting and walking behaviour with older adults. They also liked the pedometer. When you've got your meter on, you get a bit better. Marching up and down the hall, there we have it. Might help you do that. So they like the pedometer too. So from that, we have had some impact, some knowledge exchange, you'll be glad to know, Anne Sophie. We're very connected with the national organisation in Scotland, Paths for All, who attempt to help the nation increase its walking. It trains walk leaders. It helps in a variety of ways maintain or find new paths, creates walking groups. And they have a community pedometer pack, and their pack and their advice is based on our research, which suggests a gradual approach, use a pedometer, and aim to add to your own baseline level, rather than having any idea that you should try what is in the public domain, the goal of having 10,000 steps, because that is just frankly too much for people who are at that moment inactive. So that's where we've had some impact. We've also had a Beltane Fellowship. Beltane is a public engagement fellowship for the universities of the City of Edinburgh. Myself and my colleague Liz Such were awarded one fellowship that was particularly to do with engaging with the Parliament. And we had the same theme of encouraging the Parliament workforce to sit less and walk more. I had a lovely 6 months, being fortunate enough to go in and out the beautiful Parliament building to do this particular work. We tried to raise awareness of sitting down time, and we tried some personal engagement with people who thought they might like to try to sit less during the working day. So that went on very nicely, and our report created these top tips from the workforce themselves. Not too many MSPs in this particular group. They were afraid, I think, to be measured on how much they were doing, but some were in there. And these are the things that they found most helpful: using the stairs. I obviously chose this lecture theatre especially for that tonight, so you had no choice at all. Leave your desk at regular intervals. You know, that sounds common sense, but how many times do you find yourself stuck there all day? Get outside, a breath of fresh air. People seem to know that the fresh air was a helpful thing. Go and speak to colleagues rather than emailing and calling. Don't eat your lunch at your desk. Heck, I'm very guilty of that myself. So another way to break your sitting down time. Use the distant places: water coolers, printers, photocopiers, toilets. On the very other end of the campus. We've got a big campus at Edinburgh. Could be away all day. And we created a blog site. So if you're interested to see what we did in that particular project, you can follow that even now. So, the dog, the way forward. We're coming to the end. Good. This is Ellie, my dog. I always try to get her in all of my presentations. She is showing us the way forward in the Benmore Forest Park here. And this is where I'm going to show you what we're doing with our walking programs in some current projects where we don't yet have the findings, but they're underway. The first of those is a project called iConnect, originally funded by the EPSRC, where we were evaluating across the UK a whole lot of structures that connected things that had previously been severed from each other. And our job here in Edinburgh is to monitor the lovely Bridge to Nowhere in Glasgow. And this has been led by another of our Chancellor's Fellows, Graham Baker. This is now completed. It's now the Bridge to Everywhere, of course, instead of Nowhere. This is all completed, and this takes you to the station down here in Glasgow, and this takes you to the West End and the universities and the hospitals. So we're evaluating if using our walking programs on a web-based platform to the workforces around this bridge could encourage them to be more active in travelling to work and to use this new piece of infrastructure. We're also working with adults with learning disabilities, a study led by Craig Melville, who's here. He was here. He definitely was here. Where is he? There he is. There he is. Who I'm very pleased to say was one of my first physiology and sports science graduates from Glasgow. He's now a psychiatrist. He's leading this team of researchers. We've based the program that we're delivering to these adults with learning disabilities on our earlier studies, and we've got a similar 12-week intervention. It's all looking good. We've had very good recruitment rates so far, so we're keen to see what will happen with this population. And in a study led by my colleague Annie Anderson from Dundee called Actwell, we are looking at the possibility of intervening with women who attend the breast screening clinics. And it was a surprise to me to learn that 75% of the Scottish population who are able to go to breast screening do attend. So you've got a very good public health intervention if you can reach that group. And we have lifestyle coaches who are inviting them to consider lifestyle change that involves working out if they can sit less and walk more. And we have the innovation here that the intervention is delivered as people are walking round and speaking with the researcher rather than sitting down and discussing over a desk. Again, this is just underway, and we'll be interested to see if this can work, because being more active and eating more healthily will certainly reduce your risk of breast cancer. So it's a teachable moment as people turn up to have screening themselves. And then more of the football fans type work. I'm delighted to say that Sally White was successful in getting a 7th framework program from Europe, and this is called Eurofit. So it's the same idea, including Portugal, Norway, Netherlands, and other aspects of the UK. All the big football teams are in there, Barcelona, that's all the ones that I can remember. Other big football teams that you'll know about that are in the Netherlands, which I can't remember. And it's a huge collaboration worth €6 million. And it's a 5-year program, which looks like it would be very exciting to see if we can do the same things that we've done in Scotland across Europe. Oh, and an important bit of this, forgot, is that my part, and with Claire Fitzsimons, we'll be in charge of adding the sitting less part to this particular project. And we're working in collaboration with PAL Technologies, who make the Active PAL device, and they're trying to produce a device that is like a pedometer, but instead of giving you feedback on the amount of steps you've taken, it's going to give you feedback on the number of minutes you've been sitting down, so that you can use that as self-monitoring in the same way that a pedometer has worked so successfully. So that's Edinburgh's particular part of this new program. But the football fans created a lot of diversification. We have rugby fans in training, the same thing going on, the same walking programs. We're working with Sail Sharks in this regard, led by Cindy Gray, funded by Bupa. And we have Secure Fit. Now, if ever there was a place that hypokinetic disease could happen, it is in a prison. People don't get to move about enough. Any institution probably causes this. Hospitals, older care homes create hypokinetic situations. And so we're working with a couple of the prisons in Scotland to see if we can create sitting less and walking more for the prisoners, led by Kate Hunt and funded by the Chief Scientist Office in Scotland. So again, that's looking very good at the moment. So all these results are coming out soon. Now, Rowena, this is just for you. This is a new study. In case you can't work it out, I really want to do a study with dogs. But here's the barriers. Usually someone is saying, you can't bring a dog into work. And the owner is saying, hello, he's not actually working. So that's where I'm going to go next. Could we bring dogs to work? Could that help us sit less and walk more? It could probably help our mental health, for sure. And this is the cartoon. We'll show all the institutions that say you can't bring your dog into work because they're not actually working. They're helping us sit less and walk more. So, to the end, folks, thank you for your attention. I would certainly like to acknowledge all my research colleagues for their skills and for their teamwork. We have good fun in our teams, and we work hard at building those teams. So certainly, Park from Edinburgh, you've just gone with me into this adventure. Thank you so much for doing that. For all the other groups that I've been involved with, and I'm still involved with, thank you for that. Funding has come sometimes from the government, sometimes from the Chief Scientist Office, sometimes from research councils. Thank you for all of that. And to the 17 PhD students that I have been fortunate enough to supervise and graduate, I want to thank them. I feel like I stand on their shoulders. They have done amazing things. 3 of them have been heads of school. 2 of them have had their inaugural lectures. 2 have retired. The majority of them are working in higher education, and there's a very special combination of students that I have here tonight. in the back there, Jean Rankin, who was one of my first PhD students, and she was studying exercise and pregnancy. And Jean Rankin's daughter, Lindsay, who is currently one of my PhD students. And it will be a very proud moment for me when you graduate, Lindsay, and I have supervised both your mum and yourself. The additional twist here is that Lindsay is pregnant. There's time yet, there's time. You could have a prodigy and I could get 3 in a row from you. And to finish up, I'd like to thank Cayman Rowe, my partner, for encouraging me to apply for this job and to stop muttering about retiring. And so I did. And here I am. I've been hugely invigorated, and thank you, Edinburgh, for that opportunity. Thank you.
I do think you should take the principal as your champion in the university.
Right.
He tells me regularly that he tries to walk 2 hours a day by making sure that he has all the appointments in other people's offices, so he has to walk all around the campus. So I think you should give him a pedometer and challenge him to up that to 3 hours a day. But I think it's been an enormously enjoyable and interesting lecture, but also an incredibly useful one. And I've just texted my daughter and asked for a pedometer for Christmas. I'm sure everybody's been tweeting throughout the entire lecture, and I want your numbers of followers to have gone up as a result. But you're now all very welcome to come down to the reception, which if you just go down the stairs, round to the left, and in that door, we'll be able to have a much more extended and informal conversation. But in the meantime, Nanette, thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
This production is brought to you by the University of Edinburgh.